Hello, everybody, and welcome to Deep in the Valley. I'm very excited today because we have the Indiana contingent, or half of the Indiana contingent, from the great state of Indiana on today. Laurel Hosmer, the athletic director of Valparaiso University. Welcome, Laurel.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
So I always start with, give us a little bit about your background. We were talking before we hit record. You have been all over the United States. Kind of tell us about how you got into athletic administration and about your journey before becoming the athletic director at Valpo.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. To your point on the coast to coast, I always joke, I just got to hit the Southwest to be able to pin up the map, right? I was a Division III student athlete. I played soccer in college, and that's kind of the beginning of the story of how this all comes about. I grew up in a suburb of Boston and got recruited to go to SUNY IT in Utica, New York, and said, where's that? And yes, sure, let's go play some soccer. And best experience, best thing I could ever done for myself. I always tell people in a former life, I was a restaurant manager actually before I really found my calling. So, I love the long hours, but realized that waking up with dread wasn't the best way to spend those hours. And so really thought about what I wanted to do, and probably a little bit of divine intervention that gave me the word salad of sport management, and applied to several graduate programs in sport management, and was lucky enough to get into UMass's program, and was given the opportunity because I wrote in my admission letter that I wanted to be an athletic director, not knowing what that really meant, but I was given the opportunity to be a graduate assistant in the athletic department and compliance in the business office, actually. So that's really where the journey started. When I finished up my 2 years there, through that time, I had the opportunity to also do an internship in a portion of the athletic department of my choosing, and heard the words customer service in the development shop, and I was sold ever since. Went from UMass to the University of Georgia, worked in their athletic fundraising there, and then made the next move over to Eastern Washington University in Cheney, Washington, right by Idaho. And then had the opportunity to go to University of Delaware there, work as a major gift officer. Then went up to Philly, kind of stayed in the area. I always say Wilmington's like Philly South, and went up to Philly and worked at St. Joseph's University, overseeing fundraising area there, and had an opportunity to be a sport administrator. And then next step was I got a call to come here and serve as the deputy athletic director for revenue generation and SWA. And life has a funny way of giving you what you ask for in mysterious ways. And so not long after I got here, I had the opportunity to serve as the interim athletic director, and then I suppose earned the full-time job, and I'm grateful for it. It's been a very fast and very wonderful 2.5 years here.
That's awesome. That's a great story, but really interesting career. And you've been in everything from fundraising to you name it. You probably have done it. So it's great that you're leading Valpo going forward. Following up on that, Valparaiso has now been in the Missouri Valley on a basketball side this is going to be your 10th year. You also have a full range of sports. Not all of them are in the MVC. Football, you play in non-scholarship in the Pioneer League. You share that with Drake.
Yes.
They're in that league. Talk about your vision, because one of the things I've learned from talking to your coaches in the last week is Valpo's done a really good job of getting the community behind it, especially the last couple of years. You've made some major leaps in NIL and what you're doing there. Talk about your vision for Valpo athletics.
Yeah, I think that is really important to me when I think about Valpo athletics and our student athletes. We want to bring in great kids that fit this area. I think that we've got something really valuable here, being an hour from Chicago, but in 20 minutes from the dunes, but having that small town Indiana piece, but really growing as kind of like a sleeper suburb. And so when I think about that, I think about who are the right student athletes to bring here. And at this university, we talk about building lives for good, and that has a couple meanings, right? And I think about how we can use athletics as a focal point to tell that story about who the institution is, and continue to have Valparaiso spoken about at a national stage. And we need to do that through competing for championships, for making some noise. And we have our 3 conferences: the Missouri Valley Conference, the Pioneer Football League, and then bowling is in Conference USA, which we affectionately call the SEC of bowling. And I think it's about continuing to elevate how we talk about who we are. I think we've had a lot of Midwest humble, and I think one of the things I think about is how do we tell our story as who we are, but with pride, and make sure people know how to speak about who we are and what we do and how we're changing lives here, but also changing the way that we're going to compete for championships and have a great experience for our student athletes.
I think a lot of people may not realize that Valpo is one of the biggest Lutheran universities in the United States and has a very good academic reputation. And basketball, for most people who don't know about Valpo, their experience was Bryce Drew throwing in that shot. The basketball's sort of been there it is, yeah, been the front window to the university. So it's your 10th year in the MVC. Coach Powell's making real progress. Coach Boyd's rebuilding the program. Let's talk about basketball in particular. And then what's your vision of where you want to compete in the MVC, in particular for basketball?
I think when I talk about the programs we have here, and everybody's heard me say it, all ships rise with basketball. And I think that we've got the right leaders in place for our programs and some incredible student athletes. And Courtney's done a great job, to your point, of rebuilding. And Roger's done something that has been really hard to do for every program in this country, and it's bring back a lot of talent. And to think about what that can mean, you got to have some things go your way that you can't always control, health and all that, but to return meaningful minutes with an incredible core of young men that have a long runway ahead of them. I think that we have an opportunity to make some real noise this year, and you've seen the build. And so we just got to keep taking those next steps. And I'm really excited about that. And it's not easy to win in the Valley, top 10 basketball conference in the country, but we're there for a reason. And we're pouring into those programs to make sure that they lift, and we can lift all of our programs through that.
Yeah, I think it's really exciting to see you rising in the MVC on men's basketball and women's building. No disrespect to the Horizon League, but you were the kings of men basketball in the Horizon League. But coming to the MVC, that's a step up, and you've really poured into the program. We're super excited that Coach Powell has more returning players this year. He's recruited so well that they've almost always picked the freshman of the year off his team. And the NIL world has been, I think probably a lot of other college coaches have quit recruiting their own rosters and looked at who is playing for Valpo. All joking aside, he's done an amazing job. Got a really good roster coming back, and I'm super excited about what Coach Boyd will build. I think basketball's on the rise. So you got basketball on the rise, Laurel, and then you got the big change in Arch Madness where they're all coming together. Talk about your thoughts on Arch Madness.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I think that basketball is our North Star across the board, and our strategic asset is Arch Madness, and what the Valley does to put on unbelievable championship, I think second to none at the conference level. Why not look at how we grow and enhance that and offer that beyond just the men's team? I think it makes a lot of sense for us in a time when the NCAA tournament is expanding to think about how we're aligning ourselves to be in the best position possible to compete for at-large opportunities that might be there, but also just to think about how basketball is evolving and the NCAA is evolving, and how do we maximize the opportunities that are afforded to our student athletes. And when we talk about basketball, we always talk about Arch Madness. And so to offer that same opportunity to our women's programs, I think that's putting them on a greater stage, and it's an opportunity for them to have a great experience and also create some collision. Some of our fan bases are duplicative across men's and women's basketball, some are not, right? And they're different sports. They're both basketball, but they look and feel a little different, right? And so to just create some opportunity for people to check out both programs, I think is awesome. And I think that it's truly an enhancement across the board. And frankly, for Valpo and probably for all of us in the Valley, there's also a piece that there's just synergy there, right? Like for us, when you have women's basketball at home that last week, when you're in St. Louis, I have not seen a women's basketball senior game. We have been at home every single year we've been in St. Louis for our senior game. And so I'm like, I get to go to a women's basketball senior game, right? Yeah. That's incredible. And then I think when you think about not only, sure we'll talk more about this, protecting your top seeds, and again, thinking about what that can mean for a potential at-large conversation, but also the rest window. There's something to that. Our women, they're playing, and sometimes they're not able to have a watch party, the team that wins a championship for the selection Sunday because of the turnaround time. And so I think that it's all additive and enhancing for what we're trying to do and how we're thinking about our North Star in men's and women's basketball.
Yeah, I would agree. But I feel that the women are going to benefit potentially more, have a better shot at 2 bids right away. And if you can get 2 bids, that creates more NIT bids. That creates a lot of pull through for the conference. I think it's going to be really beneficial for the women because you can still schedule up. Teams don't avoid you as much, the P4. But I really think moving from that Sunday window, which they were finishing the game right as the brackets are already set, hurt the women. And I think being early like the men really helps the women's game grow. Now, I know you were in on the decision. The whole decision was made for 2 teams on both sides, and I really hope it's additive. If you follow social media, not everybody's been a fan of it.
Yeah, people don't post on social media as much about the things they're overjoyed about, right?
I think it's going to be really good. So let's talk a little bit about football. So football, Valpo is in non-scholarship in the Pioneer League. And you talk about coast to coast. For those of you that don't follow, you're going to San Diego, you're going to Stetson down in Florida, you're going to upstate New York, you're going all over the place. The closest playing partner you have is probably Drake or Dayton, right? Butler, that's right.
Butler down the road, yeah.
But let's talk about your football program, what you're trying to do there. What's your goals for the football program coming into the year would be helpful.
Yes, Andy Waddle, our head coach, he's going into his second season. He, like Courtney, I think both had a rebuild. And I think anytime you get a new job in a new place, you got to learn it and get a lay of the land and kind of learn how you're going to build the DNA of your program. And so I'm really excited about what Andy's done in rebuilding his roster, thinking about how he's recruiting it. And we just had a conversation the other day and really enjoyed hearing kind of how his thinking about the team and the roster has continued to evolve. And I expect it always will as things change. But I think there's work to do. And I expect us to get to a point where we're on the progression of competing for PFL championships, right? I think last year was an incredibly exciting year for the PFL. I had the opportunity to serve on our regional advisory committee to represent the Pioneer Football League and with the football selection committee supporting them. And so I watched a lot of PFL football last year and what Presbyterian did and what the amount of scholarship programs we knocked off was fun. And I think we had a real conversation about getting more than one into the postseason. And so I think when we think about that, we have conversations about what does it look like for us to continue to be in that place, both from a non-conference scheduling, but also for conference scheduling that continues to evolve. And so I think there's that piece of it. How are we competing? And also, where's the PFL positioned? And then I think about for Valpo football, I think it's a really strategic community asset. I think that in terms of how we can bring people together, and let's be honest, football is so important to the spirit of a university. And this year, our homecoming weekend is also the inauguration for our new president. And we're also playing our rival, which is Butler, which is it's exciting, it's energizing. And so I think about how do we grow that? Our community's all benefactors of Valparaiso University, right? So how do we bring everybody in and make it a connection point for everybody in our reach? We're Northwest Indiana's Division I institution. And so we want to bring everybody in. And I think football is a perfect way to really amplify that. It's an easy point of entry. And 5-6 Saturdays a year. It's fun to get together with people you might not know otherwise, but that you hug during a touchdown and you roll your eyes at if something doesn't go your way. And so I think we've grown a lot there, and I'm excited for how we'll continue to grow.
Thank you very much for that, Laurel. So talk about what you want to accomplish in terms of facilities upgrades, and then what I would call fundraising, NIL collective. Your job has changed a lot. We're more focused on facility upgrades. Now you got to be concerned about NIL. Talk about what your goals for Valpo athletics are, and then also share with our listeners, if they're a Valpo fan, how can they contribute? How can they get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate you asking that question. When I think about our facilities, to your point, it's not the end all be all. I think our baseline has to be right. And I think we have some work to do. And I think what's really important about our facilities is how our student athletes are cared for within them. So do our spaces operate in a way that allows our student athletes to have a seamless care ecosystem, because they're running in and out, going to class, doing other things. And so when they're here, we set up to make sure they feel cared for. It's easy to access. They're getting a good experience, and then they're going about their day. So I think about where do we need to be to provide that, and to also create great experiences for the people that when they make a choice to walk into the Arc, when they make a choice to walk onto Brown Field, are we able to give them the experience that makes them say, I'm going to do that again? Because they got a lot of choices. And so we have an obligation to make them say, I'm going to do that again if they give us the opportunity to prove it. And so I think for me, I think we think about that baseline. I think we have some opportunities coming in the next 2 years as we think about the arena specifically, just about some simple things. And one thing that's really exciting, we're getting air conditioning in the arena this year. Supporter make a gift to get that done. And sometimes those wins matter as much as anything, right? To feel like we're making progress. Well, what we really need to do is pour resource into LREP share. And we have to think about how we maximize that. We've been really lucky. We got really, really grateful, lucky this past year that we got a couple of incredibly generous gifts from some of our alum, and just had an opportunity to visit with one of them, Don Feitz, up in northern Wisconsin on a lake up there. And so grateful for that. And you don't have to be able to give $1 million to make a difference. And so for anybody that's listening that's a Valpo fan, that's what I would say is making the choice to show up, making a choice to buy a ticket, making the choice to make a gift. That makes all the difference. And to me, what I always say is philanthropy is the bandwidth of excellence. We can do enough and we can get by, but if we want to have excellence, we need the support of others and we need philanthropy. And so I think that's really important to us, but also being here, giving our student athletes a great experience, making them feel the love when they're competing for who you're proud of, Valpo on their chest. That is huge. And that's a choice to give your time when there's lots of places to give it. And it's just that I'm raising my hand, I'm going to do something today for Valpo. That makes all the difference.
You mentioned something earlier, Northwest Indiana's Division I team. I wrote that down. I love that. That's really who you are. That's and right. You're trying to foster that community. That's really great. So lots of ways to contribute. There's great ways to get involved, and you've made a lot of progress. Follow the news. Done some really good work the last couple of years. I know you're modest, but you've done a great job there.
Thanks, John. I appreciate that.
So now we get to the fun part. We just asked some fun questions. So if I'm coming to Valpo, okay, and I'm going, let's say football game, basketball game, you name it, where should I go for a pregame meal? And then what would you order?
Okay, great question. One pregame meal. Oof. It's tough. I got a couple of spots.
It is tough, but hey, Coach Paula answered about 7 of them. So good.
Sounds right. Free. That sounds right. We've got a lot of good ones here. If you're coming and it's your first time, especially, I'm going to try to get you downtown because it's something special. And it's maybe not what you would think if you haven't been to Valparaiso. It is an incredible downtown. We've got lights. We have an ice rink in the winter for kids. We've got a watering pad or whatever downtown. We got concerts. So I'd probably try to get you downtown. And if I'm going to get you downtown, I'm going to give you 2 spots. One is Perea. It's a great spot. They got great Mediterranean food. The bar is really nice. They've got some high tops, but there's also the other side where if you wanted a more quiet dinner experience, sit down service. So you have the both and there. I'd say that one, or I'd probably send you to Peddler's Pub. So you can get pizza. They have some great pizzas there, great salads, and just a nice spot that's kind of that in between a sit down and like a sports bar. It's not quite either. It's in between, and it's got a great feel, great vibe. So I'd say those are the 2 I'd recommend.
That's awesome. For those of you who may not know Northwest Indiana much, the Bears are moving right down the street because they realize how great it is.
Right. And who knows, maybe Beacon football will be playing in Bears Stadium here in short order.
could be a goal. Could be a goal, Laurel. I love that. I'm going to ask you this question. Give me one word to describe Valparaiso athletics.
One word to describe Valparaiso athletics. I'm a talker and a fundraiser, right? So I got a lot of words saying, so distill it to one. Special.
I like that. That's great, because that's what you're trying to do. Build a special experience for your fans. I really appreciate that. And then my last question before I let you go. For Valpo fans, tell them one thing about yourself that they would be surprised to learn.
One thing about myself they would be surprised to learn. I've shared it already. I'm from Boston. People don't always assume that when they meet me in Valparaiso, Indiana. What I don't talk about, because no one likes hearing this, is I'm a fan of all Boston professional sports teams. And no one feels sorry for me, and I don't expect them to.
You've had a pretty good run, Laurel.
Yeah. I sure have. It's been nice and trying to bring some of that magic here to Valpo. But yeah, I'd say that. And then let's see, something else that I used to be a competitive figure skater up through freshman year of high school.
Right. All right. That's great. Not just a soccer player, but a competitive figure skater. And by the way, I would just tell you the Massachusetts accent, you can't really hear it.
Right. When you move to all the places I've been, it all smooths out.
It does. It smooths out. So thank you so much for your time today. And I greatly appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, John. Appreciate the time.
And so that's another episode of Deep in the Valley. We appreciate the fans spending a part of their week listening to us and talking about Missouri Valley Conference basketball. If you enjoyed the show, listen to it wherever you get your podcast, but like and follow, share it with a friend, and follow along as we cover everything that's happening across the valley all year long, from Cedar Falls to Des Moines, Nashville to Normal, and Carbondale to Chicago. We'll be here every week. For Brian Dutler, I'm Chris Bowser. We'll see you next time, Deep in the Valley.